This is another archival upload of my previous mix critique videos. Again, I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is 101 through 105. This track was sent in by James. I'm assuming this tone is only going to be like this for the intro, but you're having a serious noise floor issue right here. There is a constant hissing sound in the background, which would normally happen if you had to crank the gain way too much on your preamp because the source you're recording is too quiet. So that's a problem. Hopefully when the song actually kicks in, that disappears, but I guess we'll find out. All right, so that hissing kind of went away because everything got louder, but there's a lot of harsh upper mid frequencies in that guitar tone. Like, it's not quite hitting my pain threshold yet, but it's very close to it. You got a lot of frequencies masking each other. Like, once the drums and the bass are in there, I really can't make out what's going on in those rhythm guitars anymore. You have a serious source tone problem with those rhythm guitars. You need to re-record those. Also, for some reason, the entire mix is skewed to the left. Like, there's a lot more coming out of the left side. All right, overall, you're also pushing this way too far in the master. That's probably part of where all that distortion is coming from. You're hitting like -3. That's way too hot for where it needs to be. This track was sent in by Matthew. All right, so this sounds pretty good so far. The guitar tones are really good. There's a lot of mud, especially in the drums, and I would like a little more room sound in the drums in general. The snare especially sounds really flat, like it's not popping like I would normally want it to. And yeah, you gotta figure out where all that mud is coming from. It's predominantly in the drums, but it's messing up the whole track. You're also missing a lot of sub information, which is a problem. I'm assuming that you heard the mud and you were trying to take care of it, so you cut a lot of the low end, but mud isn't really in the actual lows, it's in the low mids. So you need to look in like the 150 to like 500 hertz range for that mud, and you definitely need a lot more information below 150 hertz. It sounds like you used a clipper on the master bus before the limiter to bring up the overall volume, which is normally something I recommend doing, but you definitely hit that clipper too hard. It's taking out too much of the dynamic range. Everything sounds just like completely pinned as a result. Like, it's not overall too loud to the point that it's painful, but there's clearly no dynamics in the track at all because that clipper is being used too much. The song was sent in by Shay. First things I'm noticing, it sounds pretty good in like the upper mids. It sounds like you have a really good balance in the upper mid range. So this probably sounds great coming out of a phone speaker, but you're missing a lot of low end information. It sounds really thin. You need a lot more below like 300 hertz and down. You definitely need some more subs, but it sounds really thin in the low mid range. And that's where most of the energy of the track is going to come from. So you definitely took too much out of like the 150 to 500 hertz range. You need to add some of that back in. Like, especially in the guitars, it sounds like you high-pass the guitars way too far, and it sounds like there's virtually no bass in there at all. Yeah, I don't know, man. This is a weird one because, like, it sounds like all your source tones are really good. Like, the guitar tone sounds like it would be good if there was more of the low mids. The vocals sound great. The drums sound pretty solid. Even what I can hear of the bass sounds like it had a good source tone. And like I said, this sounds really well balanced in like the upper mid range. So again, this probably sounds really good through phone speakers, but you just have this massive hole in your low mids. So it sounds really thin as a result. Like I said earlier, the low mids is where all of the energy and the punch of your track comes from. It's a shame because if it weren't for that massive hole in the low mids, this would be a really well balanced, good sounding track. This track was sent in by Lee. Alright, it seems like the theme for today is cutting too much out of the low mids. So your bass is filling out the low mids well. That sounds like where it should be. But the guitars, it sounds like you high-pass them way too much. It sounds like there's almost nothing below like 500 hertz at all in the guitars. So it just sounds super empty down there. Even the drums, you're missing a lot of the low mid energy in the drums. And you definitely need more sub energy in the kick. The guitar tone isn't great to begin with, but it can work in genres like this. The vocals sound halfway decent, but yeah, without that low mid frequency in the drums and the guitar, it just, the whole track sounds like nothing's filling in where it needs to. Yeah, it sounds like you did a massive boost in the guitars in the like 2 to 4K range, and it's making it really harsh, and by comparison, there's no low end to it. Whatever you did to boost that 2 to 4K range in the guitars, you need to just take that out entirely, and then bring the overall level of the guitars back up, because that'll fill out the sound of the whole track a lot more. What's missing in this guitar tone is the biggest problem in the whole track right now. This track was sent in by JLM.
Go, go, slow, yeah, stick it all up that nose hole.
Alright, that intro is fucking hilarious. So far, the balance is really good. Like, you got really solid low end, great mid range. High end sounds good. You're not even getting harsh in the high end. You did say that it was unmastered, but honestly, the mix is so loud already that there's not really room for the mastering to go anywhere. Generally, you want the overall output volume to be finished in the mastering stage, and most mastering engineers are going to request a slightly quieter file. Like, they will generally ask you to not have your final limiter on the mix so that they can get the final output volume the way that they would normally do it. So I don't know what you're expecting to happen in the mastering process, but they're not going to have headroom to do anything with this track with how loud the mix is already. Alright, you're honestly, for this style of music, I think you're lacking in the subs a little bit. Granted, the speakers I'm listening on aren't the best at recreating sub, but I can generally hear when there's not quite enough of it. Like, you have good energy in the low mids and getting into the low end, but like the real sub lows aren't as pronounced as they should be.